All right, everyone, welcome back to the Black and White Flag here on NFTV Extra. My name is Matt, and this week I'm joined by Lee, the Ferrari fan. We've seen him clips the past couple of weeks. He's delighted with the past few races. How are you feeling after this week, after the 2-week break, Lee?
For people that haven't seen it, I won't give it away. I might have just given it away a little bit, but yeah, it was back in the thick of the action one week after another, wasn't it? And then we had a 2-week break. But yeah, good to see the F1 back and away from the Middle East down to Australia.
Yeah, nice trip for them down under. Unfortunately, it was a 6 o'clock start for us in the UK, so I had to watch it on a replay. I won't lie, I didn't get up for that. I'm not that big of a fan. I don't know about you, but yeah, it was a 2-week break. Give some teams some time to fix the issues that they'd seen in the first couple of weeks, which we saw in the qualifying results, which we'll come on to shortly. But yeah, it was Sebastian Vettel back from his COVID break, his first race in the Aston Martin. And obviously, Charles Leclerc looking to improve on last week's performance after, unfortunately, being Max Verstappen, winning the first race he actually finished in after the 2 DNFs for Red Bull in week 1. So we'll get straight into it. We'll not beat around the bush. We'll have a look at qualifying. We'll not spend as long as we usually do on this, Lee, because it was pretty much the status quo. There's a couple of standouts there, which we'll talk about, but if I just quickly share my screen, here we go. We'll slight spoiler there, but we'll go from the bottom to the top. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin, yet again, a poor qualifying performance from him. Aston Martin just haven't got the feet under them this year, have they?
I didn't rate Lance Stroll. I didn't rate both the Canadians, to be fair. I think Nicholas Latifi loves a good crash, doesn't he? Yeah. But I think Vettel will come good. I think because he's been an ex-Ferrari or what have you. I think Vettel is world class. Yeah. I just think he's got a poor car in him.
Yeah, it's a shame to see him struggling. Obviously, we'll get onto the race result, but I think the commentator said he had only 26 laps around in practice and qualifying before the race, which is not a lot. And obviously, with his coming back from COVID as well, you'd expect him to be struggling a bit, as is reflected in his 17th place finish there. But yeah, Haas, again, not really improving on last week where they qualified quite well. Obviously, Mick Schumacher, nice to see him back after his crash. But Haas kind of down the back end of the field again. Do you think it was a fluke the first couple of races, Lee, or do you think they've actually got the pace and were maybe just a bit unlucky?
They've got the Ferrari engine, and everyone who's got that engine looks good this year. So
yeah,
maybe a little bit too early to say, but maybe if you asked us that after 5 or 6 Grand Prix, I would expect Haas to be bottom end of the midfield.
Yeah.
So you're probably talking 13th to 15th to do have a better car than some of the back markers. So I think it's about right where you'll probably see them later on the season.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Yeah, we'll get onto the midfield and the back markers when we come to the constructors' title chase at the end of the show. Alex Albon in the Williams actually got disqualified from qualifying because he couldn't provide a litre of fuel at the end. So he started from the back of the grid.
It's mad, that.
It's just straight. I don't know if it was a tactic or whatever they thought they were doing there. It didn't work out for them because they started in 20th. But yeah, a decent performance from him in the race, which we will come to. But then Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo and Yuki Tsunoda 13th and 14th. Valtteri Bottas in 12th, breaking his streak of, I think it was 103 races, making it into the top 10 in qualifying. So he'll be disappointed to have ended up there. But yeah, Alfa's showing some decent pace in the first couple of races, but not quite getting into the top 10 in qualifying. Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri not reaching the heights of what he did last year in the same car. And then Fernando Alonso in 10th. Unlucky not to do better than that, Lee. I don't know if you watched qualifying, but he was on court really for a pole position lap. He was faster than Charles Leclerc in the 2 first sectors. And then the red flag, which ended Q3 early, ended up screwing him. He stole that lap away from him and he'd ended up 10th. Really disappointing for him.
He seems to be a lot of the commentators' favourite driver out of the big boys because he's competitive, and even last season he was going on the outside of a lot of Grand Prix. They were saying, I don't know if you watched Martin Brundle's walk up and down the grid. They grabbed one of their guys and they're expected to be the second row at the very best. And that's some achievement if Alonso was to. So, watch out for that car because that could be that we might see him. You never know, nick an odd podium later on the season. But on to the next one then.
Yeah, I mean, Alpine reckon they've got the pace this year, and obviously Fernando Alonso, a very experienced driver, so wouldn't be surprised to see him at the top end of the table. But yeah, the biggest story really out of qualifying, one that I'll let you talk about, is Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari in 9th. Obviously, would have done better had he had a chance to put in a competitive lap without the red flag, but still not a very good qualifying performance from him. How do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, because of the red flag, I think that screwed him, didn't it? But he could have seen him move up with 3 or 4 places. But to be honest with you, with the car that we've had to start the season, sitting in 9th, I wasn't too bad. Yes, it's not great because of Ferrari's expectations of being blown out the water this year. But sitting in 9th, I expected him to at least challenge for top 4 place, despite him being a 9th. So I wasn't personally too disappointed. But yeah, I thought, yeah, he's going to come through the field quite easily. He's got a powerful car.
Yeah. Well, we've seen already Ferrari the most consistent, at least with their power delivery and being at the top end of the group, obviously with the Red Bulls, both Red Bulls not finishing the race in the first race, and Mercedes kind of fallen back before the break. So you'd expect him to kind of tear through that field. But yeah, we'll get onto the race as it went shortly. Yes, and the other Alpine, Esteban Ocon, put in a fairly consistent performance this season. It wouldn't be surprising to see him kind of finish 5th or 4th in the Drivers' Championship if he can get another couple of podiums and maybe win a race like he did last year. And then the big talking point for the weekend, besides Carlos Sainz finishing qualifying in 9th, is the Mercedes-powered cars in McLaren and both McLarens and both Mercedes locking out 4th to 7th, with Daniel Ricciardo in 7th, Russell in 6th, Hamilton in 5th, and Lando Norris in 4th. Big improvement, Lee, on what we've seen in the first couple of weeks.
Mate, you're going to be delighted about McLaren, aren't you? The unbiased hat on. I mean, my Ferrari merch is coming, people. So, give it a few weeks, I'll be kitted out in red. The only other time I will say that, by the way. Only other time. Always black and white, everything else. But no, it was good for the sport. It's good to see McLaren get up there. Obviously, it's my rival. I don't want to see McLaren anywhere near that, but especially with Daniel Ricciardo, it's his home Grand Prix. He's very energetic. He was looking forward to all the support. I think a couple of times the F1 team was saying that it's the biggest sporting event in the history of Australian sport, which is quite an achievement. Over 430,000 that were there. So yeah, it was a big weekend for him. Lando Norris, I think he was a little bit surprised, judging by the reaction afterwards when he said that he was up in 4th. But I think he's a fantastic driver, and I drive for McLaren, but I think he will drive for one of the bigger boys. No offense to McLaren because they're not at the moment, but I think he's capable of challenging for a championship if he had a little bit of a better car. The other 2 Mercedes, yeah, George Russell, it was a good weekend for him. Obviously, we'll talk about the race shortly, but yeah, Lewis Hamilton, and it's mad to think because this is, in inverted commas, a struggling car, but I know, but they're still up the top. So looking at 5th and 6th, I thought Mercedes would have thought, yeah, if we can get a podium finish, yeah, we'll do well.
Yeah. I mean, they've already had a podium finish in the first race of the season with Lewis Hamilton after those Red Bulls had the engine issues. But yeah, the porpoising issues that they had in the first couple of races seemed to have disappeared or at least reduced in the qualifying session that we watched. And they seem to have used this kind of 2-week break to sort out which issues they had. And it's nice, consistent times for them across qualifying. So they were up into 5th and 6th. And like you say, Lando Norris in 4th. Great drive from him, probably outperforming what the car can do because he is such a good driver. And then we come to the big boys. Sergio Perez in 3rd after his pole position last week. Max Verstappen in 2nd. And then Charles Leclerc claiming his 2nd pole position of the season. Fantastic drive to get that pole position, wasn't it, Lee?
Yeah, literally right at the end, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it looked like it was going to be Verstappen, but then Charles Leclerc just literally chocolatey cleared his way through it. Literally, all chocolate, sexual, racing through the line to get pole. It would have been delighted because if he wasn't in the top 2 and he was going to start 3rd, I had the feeling that the Red Bulls could pull away.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that Sainz would come to the field and Sainz would eventually challenge Perez for that 3rd place. I think Verstappen's too quick. That was my thinking going at the weekend. Okay, it's not too bad. Sainz is in 9th. If you ever put him on the soft tyres, a couple of stops, you might see him come towards, because no disrespect to the Mercedes and McLaren, Ferrari are a little bit better this year. I say a little, and I'm being nice there. But the race day comes, and well, let's talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about the race. Yeah, it was some race, really. I mean, Australia this year, they've widened some corners, they've changed the DRS zone, so it was going to be a fast track to begin with, and you knew that it was going to be a battle on track. But we also knew that, thanks to qualifying, really, I think there was 3 or 4 crashes in qualifying. We knew that there was probably going to be a couple of safety cars, maybe virtual safety cars, double yellows. You got to take all of those things into account. the way they lined up on the grid, we've talked the way that they did in qualifying, but there was a couple of different strategy choices. And we'll go straight in with Ferrari's strategy choices. Obviously, Carlos Sainz, starting a bit further back, decided to go long on the hard tyres.
Yeah.
And straight away off the line, it just went backwards because there was just no warmth in them. We've seen it already in the last couple of races. Lewis Hamilton struggled on the hard tyre, and now Carlos Sainz went backwards in his first couple of laps. And I mean, I'll let you explain the rest because it must have been mortifying for you to watch.
Well, that's what I said. I thought, going into the race, you'll be on the softs, and then you'll have the two-stop strategy, and you'll try and get towards the podium position. But it was a very, very poor start, and obviously we've seen it back in the replays. He just didn't have any grip. Those cars, I think, after the first lap, I think he was already all the way down. He was getting overtaken left, right, and centre. Very sluggish, very slow off the pace. And then lap one's completed nearly. I think it was just completed, and then he decides, no, I can't get a grip here, and goes off. I think it was that fast junction, isn't it, the left and the right, 3/4 the way through the race, which is just opposite the lake, next to the lake. Decides to go off the track. He's in the gravel. I think his car's still running,
Yeah,
I think I heard him on the radio. So give me a push on the Ferrari. Like, just turn it off. You're already a lap behind. You're not gonna do anything today with that car. But I would have liked to seen them come out, because Schumacher would have demanded that in the Ferrari back in the day. Schumacher would have, get out of here. Yeah. But if he was pushed back on the track, yeah, he might have. But it was too much. You would have been talking a lap and a half by the time he had to pit again. So disastrous start for Sainz. I'm thinking, oh, great.
Yeah, it was unfortunate for him. Yeah, like you say, just beached it. There was no real damage to the car. It was just couldn't go anywhere, and he needed a push to get off the mark for him. Yeah, disappointing race. Ended up with a DNF for Ferrari. I think they were talking before he crashed. He could, depending on how Leclerc's race goes, he could end up leading the title, the drivers' championship without actually having won a race if he'd done well this race. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be for him. Ended up finishing the race out. This is what he had to say on Twitter after it. Not an easy weekend to digest. We need to learn from it and come back stronger. Of course, Ferrari at their home race in the next race, heading to Italy. Must be looking forward to that, Lee.
Is that the race sprint as well, isn't it? I think it is.
That's the sprint qualifying, yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting one. I think with this car, I'm expecting Carlos Sainz to win at least a couple of Grand Prix this season with this car, because we'll look so good. I said that, I tweeted that out. I think he will. I think he'll win a couple this year. I think it's looking a lot more clearer that Leclerc is number one. But last season, you remember, Leclerc was great in the first half, and then it was Sainz second half, and they were almost right into the last race, almost neck and neck with the points, and Leclerc just nicked it. But I think Leclerc's looking like he's obvious number one driver. But I am expecting Sainz to bounce back pretty good at Imola.
Yeah, hopefully so for the Ferrari anyway. And then, like we say, he was beached in the gravel, so that brought out the safety car, bunched the pack up again, and it was pretty, there was a couple of battles in the midfield, but as the front row goes, it stayed the same. I think Hamilton at that point had overtaken Perez, so he was up behind Verstappen, but the safety car let Perez catch back up to Hamilton. We went racing again, and it looked like Max maybe could have got Leclerc, but it was a great getaway from Leclerc. And a few laps later, he was 6-7 seconds down the road. He was absolutely flying in that Ferrari. Are you surprised at how much difference there is between the two cars? Obviously, we've only really seen the battle in the first two races between Leclerc and Verstappen. The second drivers haven't really been able to get in the mix in first and second. Are you surprised at the amount of difference between the two cars?
Yes, I know, because if you remember, Verstappen had a lot of work done just before the race. So I'm thinking these cars not fully there today.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it's great that, Leclerc's pace is, but I don't think that tells the full picture. I think there's something wrong with Verstappen's car. We've seen it later on, but they were filling on with, especially at the front of his car, around his nose area for a good, up to half an hour just before the race was actually about. It might even be tighter than that. So I don't think the Red Bull was fully added to it. I think there is a problem. We'll probably learn more in the next day or two. But yes, it's great that Ferrari got the pace, but I don't think it was a true reflection. I think it's very, very close to seeing the first two Grand Prix, especially with the fantastic overtaking from each driver, neck and neck. And it's great. It's what the new rule try to bring in for the sport. And Imola has a long, fast circuit as well, so that's where you'll see proper pace.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting battle. I think that could be already, how the season goes. If the Ferrari can get both cars on the podium, I think they're running away with the constructors. I mean, we'll get onto the rest of the race today. We already know that they didn't have a driver finish with Carlos Sainz, but we'll see how Leclerc got on. I'll quickly share the results. We'll go from back to front, and you'll immediately see one of the stories of the day coming out from the race, the DNFs. Obviously, we've already talked about Carlos Sainz. Sebastian Vettel put it in the wall after a spin. Unfortunate for him to not finish his first race back after COVID. And then Max Verstappen not finishing again for the second time in 3 races. Brandon won't be happy, will he?
I'm not sorry, but I am sorry, but not sorry.
It was unfortunate for him because it was a decent drive. He wasn't really threatening up until that point, but it was a decent drive from him. And it's just another mechanical fault that's let him down.
Strange one, wasn't it? Because he's driving normally, and then he smells something and he panics. I think I need to get out of this car. Then as he gets out the car, you see a bit of flames. So I don't know if it was gas leak or I don't know what it was, but something's obviously startled him like a deer and thought, no, this is not for me. And it was a very strange one because you just parked his car at the side and thought, no, that's it, I'm off.
Yeah, I mean, he was coming down the straight. He's smelled some, whether it's fuel or gas, we don't know. And then, within kind of 5 seconds, the engine's off and he's off to the side of the track. He didn't want any part of that.
Do you think, Matt, that's got something to do with the mess on that what they're doing at the start? Do you think that's played it, or is that a totally different problem that they've had there?
I think it's probably just from what I watched in the build-up, the issues that they had at the start, it looked like they were toying with his front wing a bit. See, I think that was maybe just the setup of the car, how they were going to approach the race. I think the issue that put him out of the race might even be an issue that they had in the first race, because I think they said it was a fuel injector pump or something along those lines that had the issue in the first race. And if he smelled something, like fuel that's flammable, maybe it's the same issue with the same car. I don't know. Obviously, they said they're going to have to wait to get it back to the factory, possibly even until Tuesday before they find out what the actual issue was. But if it's a recurring reliability issue, they're going to be very worried about that because, in the last couple of seasons, this is one of the questions I was going to ask you, actually. Do you think Ferrari have the reliability this year to go all the way? Because we know they've had issues in the past couple of seasons with the car not keeping up with the drivers. Red Bull seem to be the team that are suffering that. And I don't think they're going to be able to, if they carry on like this anyway, they're definitely not going to be anywhere near the top, are they?
Well, Perez on the radio said, what's happened with Max? And I didn't like the answer back, because that wasn't just like, don't worry, it's not your car. That's not the answer I want to hear if I'm driving. But both cars had the same issue previously when they had DNFs, and it's not good for Verstappen himself because he wants to, Lewis Hamilton might come good later in the season, and these points are Hamilton's pinching, which are third places and what have you, that might come back and haunt Verstappen later on. But going with Ferrari's reliability, I think it's a little bit too early to say. I had it last season, and I was tweeting out things like, "Oh, it's great to see Ferrari fourth, and great to see a third and a fourth position," and now it's notched up a level. And the expectations with Ferrari are going to be higher because they're at the front of the grid and they've got a much more powerful car, which they have been saving for this season. So I even just said there just before, I expected Sainz from 9th to challenge for the podium to try and get where Perez is today, despite his problems. But that's already the expectations that Ferrari's setting amongst its fans, if you want to call it that. But I think it's too early to say, because I think the Sainz problem today wasn't him. It wasn't his issue today. That was Ferrari. So already one of the cars is gone. But we'll just gotta wait and see.
Yeah. Well, that's all we can do, really, isn't it? Wait and see. Hopefully, Red Bull can fix their issues, because we like to see a battle on track. We don't want to see one team running away with it, even if it is Ferrari for you. So running through the rest of the field, Fernando Alonso had a really good race, actually, going really long on the hard tires. One of a couple of drivers to do that. But got a little bit messed up when he went onto the mediums and immediately grained one of them. So had to pit again. So ended up pitting twice after going so long on the hard tyre. Ended up finishing last of the finishing cars. Only Nicholas Latifi just ahead of him. The less said about his performance, the better in that Williams.
Did you find it strange he pitted one lap after another?
Yeah, it was. Me and Brandon
had to pit again. That's the tactic, wasn't it? So
Stroll did that right at the start under the safety car, because they were if you pit under less time lost, but and it worked out for Stroll for a while until he got his penalty.
Sorry, that's a man about Stroll, man, not the TV Canadian flag again.
Yeah, yeah. No, but we're talking about Latifi. Me and Brandon had a chat about him. We don't see what value he brings to the sport. I know he's got sponsors and he's rich or whatever, but when you've got last season, you've got George Russell getting the absolute most out of that Williams, and today Alex Albon will get onto his performance. As you can see, he's not even in the bottom 13 there. Alex Albon getting the best out of that Williams, and Latifi, he's crashed at the end of last season. He crashed at the start of this season. He's not putting in performances to justify his place, is he?
Nah, I think his position might be looked at because I know he's not in the fastest car in the world. Don't get me wrong, he's one of the back markers, but yeah, I just didn't rate both Canadian drivers, unfortunately. And sorry, Canada, and I, it's you got your maple flag and what have you, but nah, not for me. I don't think he's a great driver.
No,
that'll come back and bite me now.
Yeah, he'll win a world championship next year when he goes to Mercedes or something. But yeah, so moving on to the rest of the field, Yuki Tsunoda and you'll see in a moment, Pierre Gasly as well struggled after their pit stops. Haas as well, they kind of pitted just before the safety car came out, so they got very unlucky with her. But a decent race for Mick Schumacher. He was challenging around some fast cars, and obviously his first race back after a big crash, probably not expecting the best out of him. But yeah, beat his teammate Kevin Magnussen today, who's obviously already scored points for Haas this year. Lance Stroll had a couple of penalties towards the end for weaving on the straight. And I think there was another one chucked in there as well. I mean, no, he didn't get a penalty for the other incident. But yeah, he went really long. Like you say, Lee, I think it was while Sainz was beached, he pitted. He started on the mediums. Then he started on the hards. Then he pitted for the mediums and then went back onto the hards and went the entire race on the same set of hards, which is impressive. But it didn't really pay off for them today, as you can see, because they finished out at the points. It's strange to see an F1 car do the entire race on almost one set of tyres, isn't it?
Yeah, I found it bizarre. It's because of the rules. It's a getting around the rules, but fair play. I mean, with Lance Stroll, as I say, the Canadian drivers, I know he's in 12th place, but
yeah,
I don't expect him to get many points this season. But just pointing at Mick Schumacher, I always want, because the Ferrari brand and what have you, and obviously he's Academy driver, Mick Schumacher of Ferrari. I want him to do well with the Haas. But yeah, with Lance Stroll, yeah, you mentioned obviously a couple there. At one point, Hamilton was fighting against Magnussen as well, so they've dropped back. But yeah, I think if you look at the times as well, there was a bunch where I think it's when Stroll just got his 5-second penalty. There's about 5 or 6 cars in the space of about within a few seconds of each other. So any one of these could have nicked in and got the points.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one that did, we'll skip over Zhou Guanyu because just outside the points for him, very unlucky today. Alex Albon in the Williams, picking up Williams' first points this season. Incredible drive from him because he did the whole race on the tyres that he started the race on and only pitted on the last lap and came out ahead of Zhou Guanyu 0.3 seconds ahead after his pit stop.
I think, did he start 20th?
He started 20th and finished 10th. Yeah, he started from the back of the grid and just played an absolute blinder. Fair play to Williams today. They got the strategy absolutely spot on, and fair play to Albon because getting that amount of laps on one set of tyres is impressive. But to do so in the top 10 and drive with a consistent lap time and not drop back was an absolutely incredible performance from him.
It is because it's a quiet drive, but a clever drive.
Yeah.
He wasn't mentioned loads, and that's a fantastic drive. And you've seen the passion in the Williams garage as well. So because obviously losing George Russell, I sound more like Brandon there. Good old losing Russell is a big blow to them. So that's a fantastic drive, and he's possibly contender for driver of the day.
Well, I was just about to say that he's my driver of the day. I know obviously the plaudits will go to the drivers that finish higher up, but to do that in a Williams, we saw George Russell do it last year. But fantastic drive from Alex Albon, very underrated driver in my eyes. Unlucky not to get a shot with Red Bull, but he didn't really take his chance with both hands when he got it, did he? But yeah, moving further into the points in the top 10 finishes, Pierre Gasly in the AlphaTauri. Not a great day for him, but still securing a few points on the board. Valtteri Bottas in the Alpha having a nice quiet day as well. Battled hard down there. There was quite a lot of battling in the midfield, which is good to see, Lee, because the new regulations, like you mentioned, and obviously the track's changed at Australia as well. Traditionally not a track that would see a lot of overtakes in. But there was a nice little battle towards the back end of the midfield today with a few DRS trains, a lot of overtaking. And it's nice to see that, isn't it? It's a nice change.
Yeah, especially with Bottas, because I'm intrigued how he does without obviously being in the Mercedes. And it's interesting with that Mercedes are struggling, not so much today, but in the previous two. So I've got an eye on Bottas. At one stage, he was outside the points until Stroll got his 5-second penalty, and then there was that, as I say, that mix of cars, and Bottas he's a good driver. I think he's a lot better than some of these in midfield. But yeah, it's a good points considering it was only within about 15 laps of the race end and he was outside. So it finished 8th and pick up 4 points. That's a good drive from him.
Yeah, brilliant drive from him. Well done to him picking up a few points. Alfa Romeo already surpassing their points tally from last year, I believe. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine finishing in 7th, pretty standard from him. Daniel Ricciardo gaining a place from where he started in the McLaren. Nice of him to finish in his home race in the points. I think first double point score for McLaren this season with Lando Norris finishing in 5th. Very small gap between the two. They pretty much were nose to tail for the entire race, and it was. What do you make of it when teams don't let each other race? It seemed they both had good pace. Ricciardo was up Lando Norris's back end for quite some time. You'd think maybe they'd let them race and let Ricciardo get away. Didn't seem to have the chance to do that today. Do you think that's team orders, or do you think it was just kind of playing it safe?
I think there would have been a little bit of worry there that, wait a minute, we're both in the points. We're pretty high. We're going to score 18 points here. Just stay at home. But McLaren have allowed I remember, I know maybe before your time, like Hakkinen and Coulthard, if one, they had a couple of times and the rules have changed, that if one of them made it around the first corner, they would go on and win the race, and then they'll let another car, they'll let Coulthard, let Hakkinen through, and they used to do stuff like that back in the day.
Right.
That's one for the older fans. But regarding team orders, I just think race, but don't race against each other. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which driver finishes 5th or 6th, they're still going to pick up 18 points. So there could be some element of worry in there. Look, let's just pick up these 18 points. These are valuable. And because I think realistically this season, McLaren will do really, really well to never mind just finish third, just to compete and with 3rd place, because I am expecting Mercedes to come back. I think they'll comfortably finish top 4 this season in the constructors. But it would be good to see a little bit of a challenge from them. Yeah. Not that I don't like to say that too much, but as a neutral, I think it's. I mean, you're the McLaren fan. You tell me.
Well, I mean, it's brilliant to see them both in the points. It's nice because I was very worried that when I saw that Mercedes and McLaren were both having issues at the start of the season, I knew Mercedes would turn it around because they've got the resources, they've got the manpower, they've got everything behind them to turn that around. McLaren being a slightly smaller team, I was a bit worried that they'd let their issues get on top of them. They've got 2 fantastic drivers, obviously the experience of Daniel Ricciardo and the sheer brilliance of Lando Norris. I think he's probably one of the best young drivers on the grid.
I would agree. Just put in there, Ricciardo has to do better this season.
Yes.
Last season was shocking.
If he doesn't, there's not long left from him in this sport, because if McLaren, last year they were very competitive. If they can get the car to that competitive level that they were last year, there is no excuse for Daniel Ricciardo to not put in results. We know he's a good driver. You put him in a good car, he'll put in good performances. He's won races. Yeah. So why can he not be at the top end of that grid? I was a bit worried about McLaren not being able to turn it around, but it seems to be that they've put their issues behind them this week. We'll see come Italy if that continues, if they can get a double points finish there again. And if, like you say, they can finish in the top 4, we'll take a look at the Constructors' Championship standings at the end of the video, because it's a very interesting reading. We'll look at the Drivers' Championship as well. So double points finish for McLaren, which means the 2 ahead of them, gaining a couple of places each, are George Russell and Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. George Russell's first podium for Mercedes on his 63rd race in F1. He wears number 63 if you're superstitious. He gets his first podium for Mercedes. He got very lucky today, did George Russell, because he pit just after the safety car came out, whereas Lewis Hamilton pit just before the safety car. So Lewis lost a lot of time. George gained a lot of time. Good results for Mercedes, considering the issues they've had, Lee. Even better for George Russell, who's really quietly having quite a good season.
You mentioned team orders before. I think Hamilton said something on the radio, didn't he?
He wasn't
I'm
happy.
sure he said to, "Come on, guys, you let me down here," or something along those lines.
Yeah.
He wanted to race, and I reckon if he was allowed to race, Hamilton would have got him.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think Hamilton's a much better driver. He's a lot more experienced, but that's great to see George Russell, I'm going Dutch again. Russell, 3rd place, getting a podium, considering he's had not a spectacular drive. I think you're all right. A couple of things have gone in his favour, because I think both Mercedes would have been pegged down. It had Sainz, because I think Sainz would have finished higher and Verstappen continued, so they would have been pegged back a couple of places. But it's. I mean, you mentioned the stand, and I was gobsmacked at where he is, but we'll come to that shortly. But yeah, it's a good drive for Mercedes, and they're slowly. I wouldn't say they're almost there, but I think they're still a bit off the pace with the front two. But now, you're seeing them in third and fourth. That's where, at the start of the season, I would have been delighted if Ferrari were there every week in, week out. But obviously, Ferrari's expectations have blown everyone out the window. But yeah, I think it won't be too long. Give it 2 or 3 races. I think you might see Mercedes then competing right at the front.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was after the first race when me and Brandon did our predictions. I think I said Lewis Hamilton would finish second in the drivers and Mercedes would finish second in the constructors. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly, but I didn't have a lot of faith in Ferrari. We'll put it that way.
I said that changes.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely changed after I honestly thought they'd drop off, but they're showing absolutely no sign of slowing down. But yeah, so Lewis Hamilton just outside the podium after he finished on the podium in the first race, and George Russell getting his first podium in a Mercedes car. And this is what he had to say. First podium with Mercedes, strong team result today, and P2 in both championships. Shout out to everyone at Brackley and Brixworth. Let's keep pushing. Yes, you mentioned the championships. We'll get onto those very shortly after we touch on the race result. So we've seen all the cars bar a Red Bull of Sergio Perez and a Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Now, Charles Leclerc was on pole. Perez was in third. Lee, do you want to tell the good people of NFTV Extra the result of today's
F1? There you go. When I watched this, because when I had a notification on my phone before watching the race back, I'm like, oh, why have I seen that? Because I had my alarm set, believe it or not, to try and get up. I had it set for 5 a.m., 5:15, 5:30, 5:45, every 15 minutes to try and wake up. And every time my alarm was going off, I'm like, oh, give it another 10 minutes. Oh, give it another 10 minutes. And I didn't watch it. So when I woke up, which is about 9:30, I seen Leclerc had won. I'm like, oh, I'm happy. But I wasn't overexcited because I'd already known the results. I watched the race back, but that was the only actual result I knew. I didn't know Sainz had dropped out. I didn't know Verstappen had. All I knew was that Leclerc had won. So I tried to stay off Twitter. Watched the race back. I don't think he was really... I think when Verstappen went off, I think that was his race. I think that was it. I said this before, and I don't think Perez is a fantastic driver. I know I used to last week, didn't agree with me. I just think Perez he's an all right driver, but I think there's other people in the field that'll do better than that Red Bull, personally, for me. But, second place for Perez is fantastic for him. But Ferrari have won, and it could have been what if Sainz still had the car. But, it's another win. It's a fantastic win. And, if you said to me that, Charles Leclerc will be literally running away with the championship after 3 races, I would have beat your hand off it, because I would have took, competitive podium finishes this season, because we knew that we had a better car. So if you said to me, are you going to get, 15 podiums or something like that, I would have took that. I'd be definitely, because I didn't expect to be this dominant so early on. And I'm like, bloody hell, Scudetto Ferrari are back, people. We are back.
Heard it here first. Ferrari are back in a home race at Italy next. We'll quickly hear what Checo and Leclerc had to say before we get on to the driver standings and the Constructors' Championship. Obviously, Perez finishing in second after qualifying on pole last week, but not winning the race. This is what he had to say. Happy to be back on the podium. Shame that we lost Max. It was an important day for the championship. We know there's plenty of work to do. Let's go. Obviously, Red Bull will be hoping to get finishing some races. Would be nice for them, given that there's been 3 races and they've had, 3 cars finish out of 6? Because they lost 2 in the first race and 1 today. So 3 finishes.
Not good, is it? 50%, is it?
Yeah, not great for Red Bull if you want to be at the top of the Constructors' Championships. And of course, Charles Leclerc getting his 4th ever career win in F1, Lee. Is that correct? You'll correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure.
It's beautiful there, doesn't he? He does.
He's a handsome chap, yeah. A win so perfect. Perfect weekend. Forza Ferrari. And yes, the Italian Grand Prix next. Is it next week? I always get my dates.
I remember next week, the week after, but it's Imola, definitely.
Yeah, definitely Imola. Yes, just before we wrap things up, then, Lee, we'll have a look at the standings. Would you like to see the constructors or the drivers?
Oh, I'd like to see both of them, please.
Which one first? Go on.
Oh, you can have any.
Right, we'll go for the constructors because it's less exciting in my opinion, and also easier to run through.
It's wonderful to look at. It's wonderful.
So pretty much all the teams on there. So it's right at the bottom, Aston Martin, the only team to yet score. Oh, I've got the wrong thing on. Aston Martin, the only team to yet score a point in the championship. I wonder when. I don't actually know off the top of my head when there was the last time that every single team scored at least a point.
For a few, yeah. I expect them to though.
Yeah, well, especially, I mean, Vettel, and if they can sort out the reliability issues they've had with their car, they can definitely be competitive because they've got one of the nicest looking cars on the grid, in my opinion, as well. But yeah, so no points for them as of yet. But obviously, Alexander Albon picking up Williams' first point of the season takes them off the foot of the table. AlphaTauri, disappointing race week for them, but a couple of points on the board from Pierre Gasly takes them up to 10. Haas, thanks to Kevin Magnussen and Mick Schumacher earlier on in the season, sitting on 12, but no points for them this week. Alfa Romeo getting a couple more on the board, moving up thanks to Valtteri Bottas. And in fifth, surprisingly, with Ocon and Alonso, Alpine sitting with 22 points, but only 2 points behind McLaren, who have moved up massively with a big 18-point haul from this racing weekend. Then maybe not surprisingly, given that they've only finished 50% at the time, Red Bull in third, a good distance behind fourth on 55 points. So that means Mercedes and Ferrari are first and second, but in which order? I'm sure it's pretty clear already. But I mean, you mentioned it earlier. When you looked at the standings, Lee, it's obviously Ferrari way out in front, almost 40 points clear. Wonderful. But Mercedes in second and 10 points clear of Red Bull. It's just so surprising given that how poor they've looked on track.
And the drivers keep saying, especially Lewis is saying, I've got a poor car. But yet your team's sitting in second place. Again, I was saying earlier on that these little points that Hamilton's picking up, and Verstappen's had 2 DNFs, that might come back and help Hamilton later on the season if they fix the car out. But yeah, Ferrari are running away with it. And as a Ferrari fan, it's great. It's not great for the sport, but it is for me as a Ferrari fan because we haven't been up there since Raikkonen and Vettel days right at the top. But the top 4 are now back where they should be, probably not in the right order, but I expect that top 4 to be the top 4. But I am expecting, a catch up. I can't see the dominance that Ferrari are so far ahead at the minute. I think that gap will be closed. You're not expecting Ferrari to win every race, so expect Red Bull to literally challenge. I think Mercedes wants to sort the car out the second half of the season. I think that's when they'll but that may be too late for both constructors and both individual for Hamilton. But so far, so good for the red engine. It looks wonderful. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it looks great. Nice and clear, 40 points ahead. But then all it takes is a couple of weeks with mechanical failures or crashes, and then some people.
That's it because the points are so. I mean, I remember, and this is going back when you have to come in the top 6 to get points, and that's it. That was it. It was 10, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it was so tight. But now because the points are so big, if you don't finish. It's a bit. If you look at this as like in a football sense, you're talking like Ferrari have effectively got 2 or 3 games in hand on the second place with all our points in front. It's going to take a while for them to catch up because Ferrari, yes, they might not win the next race, but the passion and emotions will be high at Imola. They might get a 3rd, they might get a 4th, but it's still adding those points up. So
yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it was great performance from Leclerc today, not only getting the win, but also the fastest lap of the race, which he was concerned that he was going to lose and wanted to push. And he did. He pushed on the last lap and got fastest lap because Alonso was actually quicker than him on the previous fastest lap that he had. So it's a good job that he actually did push for that and get that extra point. So yeah, he's grabbed 26 points for Ferrari on a day where his teammate didn't finish, which is a fantastic haul. And then we'll take a look at the driver standings now. We'll start from the bottom and work our way up as always. So let's have a look at the bottom of the pile. Nicholas Latifi, shock. Then Nico Hülkenberg, the stand-in driver for Aston Martin for Sebastian Vettel, obviously didn't pick up any points, so he'll remain at the foot of the table until he's called up again. Lance Stroll again in the Aston Martin, picking up 0 points. Mick Schumacher yet to score a point in the Haas, but getting closer. We saw him a good performance on the first race, obviously crashed out of the second and in 13th today. Are you expecting better things from Schumacher? He's got a decent car underneath him now. We've seen he had his shaky first season in a bit of a rubbish car, if we're being honest. And now he's got a decent car. He seems to be pushing a little bit harder. There's a bit more confidence under him.
Yeah, at least he's not 19th, 20th. He's higher up the field, which is good. And, he only needs a couple of lucky things to happen, like a couple of crashes in front of him later on the season, and he'll get in the points. So I expect him to. The Ferrari engine across the whole of the grid looks a lot more powerful. But yeah, I expect Mick Schumacher to be, and Ferrari want him to do well because he's one of their own, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And then Alex Albon with his singular point from today. Zhou Guanyu picking up his first point in his debut race and not picking up a point since. Surprisingly, Fernando Alonso down in 14th after a mechanical failure last week and then a pit stop mess up this week from his team, costing him some valuable points finishes, really. They expected a kind of top 5 finish for Alonso today, but it wasn't to be. Yuki Tsunoda down in the AlphaTauri.
Here's a question for you. Do you reckon Alonso can get top 10?
In the standings at the end of the year?
Yeah,
I think so. Comfortably. I think he's got the car underneath him. He's got the experience and he's definitely got the pace. I mean, we saw it in qualifying until the red flag, and then we saw he was up in the top 10 consistently today until his pit stop messed him up. He came out, I think, in 13th with fresh mediums and could have easily got back into the points finish, but he pushed a bit too hard and ended up having to pit again for another set of tyres. So I think he could. I don't think he'll be anywhere near threatening the top of the top 10, but I think he could easily slip in there. So hopefully, I mean, I like him as a driver. I think he's aggressive and he's smart as well. He's of a dying breed is Fernando Alonso.
Riley Fox, and he's 40, isn't he? So
yeah. But I'd like to see him do well this year, and he's not far off the top 10, as we'll find out shortly. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly 13th and 12th in the AlphaTauris. Danny Ricciardo 11th in the McLaren with only 8 points though, and then Valtteri Bottas, the number 10 driver so far with 12 points. So you can see already only 10 points between Fernando Alonso and Valtteri Bottas. That's a decent points finish away from leapfrogging those two experienced drivers on the grid there. And then comes Kevin Magnussen, surprisingly, in the Haas, also on 12 points as well in 9th. And then that's when things start to get a little bit more interesting with Lando Norris on 16 after his points finished today. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, Fernando Alonso's teammate, of course, in 20.
Just pause there as well. You look at the grid there. I mentioned Ricciardo earlier.
Yeah.
Look where Ricciardo is now. He should be looking at Ocon thinking, that's where I've got to be.
Yeah.
Because he's too far adrift. And I know it's McLaren, and I didn't like McLaren, what have you, and the rival of Ferrari throughout the years. But Ricciardo's got an engine. And I even think Lando Norris should be a little bit higher as well. They should be literally 5th, 6th. I think that's where McLaren should really aim for individual drivers this year. Ricciardo's got to do better. I know it was a good weekend for him, but going forward, he has to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's got to have that confidence in it. I know the car's been unreliable and it's difficult to drive a car like that, but you simply have to do better. But I mean, it was, like you say, it was a decent result today, and hopefully,
if Bottas was in the McLaren and it was swapped, I reckon Bottas will be higher.
Maybe, yeah, that's a good shout. Let us know in the comments down below if you think he's waffling or if you agree with him as well.
I'm not waffling. I'm telling the fact. If Bottas was in the McLaren would have more points. Facts.
Well, if ifs and buts were coconuts, we'll all be fruit and fibre. But we'll see how it comes come the end of the season. But yeah, that's the
argument at home. Do you see that?
That's the other drivers outside the top 6. And then this is where the real shock comes in. Brandon, look away now. Max Verstappen, having only finished 1 race this year. I know we're only 3 races in, but with 25 points, he is all the way down in 6th place. Through no fault of his own, he's had some good drives, but 2 races where the car is just packed in on him. Red Bull have seriously got to sort that out, haven't they?
Yeah, it's killing him. He's killing his title challenge, and I know it's mad. We're only 3 races in, but he's way, way behind the leader. And as I say, to use the football analogy, it feels like Ferrari got a few races in hand to not coast, but have some 4th finishes, 5th finishes, not worrying if Verstappen wins, because he's got to start putting points on the board. And Red Bull have not started well. Christian Horner will be absolutely furious that 50% of his cars have not finished. That's a reliability factor, so they've got to look at that and work on that in the next week or two, because Max Verstappen, he's aggressive, he's determined, he's a winner, he's a fighter. He will not like sitting where he is now.
No, absolutely. He'll be fighting tooth and nail to get back to that number 1 spot. He's got number 1 on his car, but he'll have a fight on his hands to keep
next season around.
Yeah, for next year. Right, moving into the top 5 then. We've not had the 2 Ferraris, the 2 Mercedes, or the other Red Bull of Sergio Perez. So let's have a look then. Who is in 5th? Lewis Hamilton, after his podium on the first week, is down in 5th. Not bad, but not great either. He'll be wanting, like Max Verstappen, to fight up that table. He'll be looking upwards rather than behind his shoulder. Then
But if you said after 3 races, Lewis Hamilton is ahead of Max Verstappen, what would Lewis Hamilton say?
Oh, well, I don't know what he would say, but I'd be going, oh, Lewis Hamilton must be winning the championship then, and Max is in second.
You would have probably took that because I think he's still looking at the title.
Yeah.
Even though he's way behind at the minute, I still think Lewis is looking and thinking, well, I'm ahead of Verstappen. You know, Mercedes aren't doing that great. Yes, Red Bull aren't, but 3 points is still 3 points. Again, that might come in handy if they fix the car.
Yeah, big if there. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull in 4th position. That means we're left with George Russell, Carlos Sainz, and Charles Leclerc. Obviously, George Russell getting his first podium in the Mercedes today, and Carlos Sainz not finishing the race. Has that changed things at the top? Yes, it has. Carlos Sainz is 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, only on 33 points, only 3 ahead of that rubbish second driver, Sergio Perez. Both have finished. Both have finished just 2 races out of the 3 this year. Carlos Sainz narrowly edging the battle.
It will be just it will be an interesting battle because that's the second drivers' battle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we expect
3rd and 4th, really, isn't it?
Let's just say we expect Ferrari to do all the season. You think it'll be obviously Charles versus Max, and then the second place drivers. That's a nice, interesting battle between Perez and Sainz to see whoever battles that, because I think unfortunately Sainz will become that second driver because Leclerc's starting. Well, we'll see, starting to run away for it.
Yeah, we'll not muck about then. We'll go on to the top 2. Obviously, we know it's George Russell and Charles Leclerc after his win today. Charles Leclerc, a whopping 71 points. If you combine George Russell and Carlos Sainz points, they still don't catch him. He's not nearly 40 points. He's 30 odd points clear. Massive that already, Lee, isn't it?
It is. It's still early. Don't get me wrong. A lot to play for. But right now, as I say, as a Ferrari fan, you're looking at it thinking, oh, that looks absolutely wonderful to see. Leclerc and the constructors, it all looks fantastic. And it all looks, coming to the home Grand Prix. Everyone's happy. Ferrari are back. There's still a little bit of doubt because I'm expecting the others to come back. But as I said, my expectations at the start of the season were to get a lot more podium finishes this season.
Yeah.
But they've literally, I don't know what they've done. They've just kept it under wraps, this new car, and it's absolutely unreal to see Ferrari literally dominating the sport at the moment, which is great for me because obviously I've supported Ferrari since the mid-90s. That's going way back. But yeah, we'll have to see. But what surprises me is that George Russell's second.
Yeah.
It's mad, that, isn't it?
It's quietly going about his business. I think, if I'm right in thinking, it was 4th, 5th, and then 3rd he's finished, which, considering, Mercedes have had a car that struggles, I mean, coming into a new team is always difficult. So he's done very well obviously we knew he was going to be this driver for so long, and he's had the test drive at the end of the other season. But he's outperformed Lewis Hamilton today, whether it was team orders and, he got a bit lucky, fair enough, but he's putting points on the board consistently, and you cannot take that away from him. Do you think he can genuinely put up a challenge, maybe not to Leclerc, but for that second spot in the Drivers' Championship?
No, I think it's false. Unfortunately, I think it's a false position. I do. Max Verstappen has to win the next race. He's got to, because it's what it'll do. First of all, it's a Ferrari's home GP. It'll shut Ferrari up. It'll get him back into contention, move him up he'll have a bit of confidence. I think already he's got to start winning Grand Prix, and because if they're not winning Grand Prix, it's going to be an easy runaway for Leclerc, and that's not. I want that as a Ferrari fan, of course, but as a sport, that's why you attract new people, because the sport is exciting. That's what they brought the new rules in. And if we want to come to predictions, I'll come to it shortly. But I think that Max Verstappen and I think Lewis Hamilton will go way past George Russell. As much as it's nice as it's to see him sit in the second place, I think it's a false position. I think Russell will drop down to 4th, 5th, 6th.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us know in the comments if you agree with Lee, and don't forget to drop a like on the video if you haven't already. Pretty much coming to the end of our time, unfortunately, here on the Black and White Flag, Lee. But before we go, I'll get a couple of predictions off you. I'll get your prediction for the race result at Imola. And then, because you haven't had your chance that me and Brandon did at the start of the season, give us your top 3 in both drivers and constructors. I know you've had the benefit of a couple of extra races, but we'll give you the benefit of the doubt, because I imagine you would have said Ferrari top anyway. But yeah, if we have your prediction. Would you not? All right, okay.
Start the season, I wouldn't have.
So, well, now that you've had 3 races to assess it, Leclerc's ahead in the drivers, Ferrari ahead in the Constructors' Championship. Who's your top 3 for the end of the season, and what are you thinking for the home race at Imola? Are Ferrari going to do a 1-2 there?
So at the beginning of the race, I think Verstappen will win it because I think when he's under pressure, he will perform. I think he has to for him. Yes, I know it's a Ferrari's Grand Prix, home Grand Prix. It's a fast track, so I think it will be those 2 cars running away with it. I think you're talking 10, 20, 30 seconds ahead of everyone else. I think Verstappen will because the pressure's on. I think he'll deliver. I really do. But if he does win it, I need a podium finish, whichever direction, Sainz or Leclerc. But I think that'll happen. In terms of the top 3 drivers, I think Verstappen will still win it, despite him being way behind. I think it's just the experience. I think he's more aggressive as well. I think Leclerc he doesn't really question his team, whereas Verstappen does. He's not afraid to, and I like that. That's what I want. That's what I want Leclerc to be a little bit more. I expect Verstappen. That's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting Newcastle have a title challenge, 12 points clear, and then just blow it. Yeah. That's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm expecting Ferrari to do. Have a way in front and then just blow it. But no, look, I think on the weekends where Ferrari are going to struggle, there will be some Grand Prix. You've got to pick up some 7th positions, 8th positions, just small points to see you through. But I think it will be Verstappen. I think it'll be Leclerc. And then I think it's a battle between Perez and Sainz. But I'm going to go Sainz because I don't really rate Perez that much.
Right. Well, interesting predictions.
Constructors, I think Ferrari might just pinch it. I think then it'll be Red Bull, and then I think it'll be Mercedes. I think Mercedes will come back, and I think they will win a few races second half of the season.
Yeah, well, Mercedes already in second in the championship, so they'll have to fall behind to Red Bull for that to happen. But let us know in the comments down below your predictions and what you make of Lee's as well. And if you haven't watched the first couple episodes for the race reaction, you can go back and find them on our channel on NFTV Extra. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe. Drop a like on all the videos you possibly can. Helps us out massively. And of course, go and subscribe to Newcastle Fans TV and watch all our videos over there because they're all bloody brilliant. Before we go, Lee, is there anything you'd like to add? Anything you want to say to the Tifosi out there?
Welcome back. That's all I have to say. It's been a long time suffering. I know Leclerc won a couple of years ago, but really we haven't been back since, as I say, Raikkonen days, Vettel days, and then even before that, even when Schumacher dominated the sport. So, as I say, with when Newcastle win, enjoy the moment because you just don't know what's around the corner. So, enjoy it. I mean, it's the clip I sent in the first race. I was like giving it all to Brandon. I was emotionally excited seeing Ferrari 1 and 2. Like, look at that, 1 and 2. Because I was genuinely excited, and not many people know I'm into the sport. A lot of people think I'm just football daft, which I am. But yeah, I'm into Formula 1 heavily as well, as you say. So fingers crossed, it's good for the sport. It's good for Ferrari fans. But the excitement, I am expecting a lot of twists and turns. And, there'll be a time where I have to come on the video and Ferrari haven't finished or Ferrari haven't done well. And Brandon's going to poke fun back at his back because the Belgian might win something. But and I say that tongue-in-cheek because Max Verstappen was born and raised in Belgium, but I just have a bit of fun with Brandon. But yeah, we'll have to see. But yeah, please subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, definitely subscribe, do everything you can to support us as well. I won't be here for the next race. It's in 2 weeks' time. I'll be on holiday.
2 weeks.
2 weeks' time. It's the 22nd to the 24th that weekend. I'll be away, so I might be able to watch it, but I won't be able to have your reaction.
I'll try and jump on in with Brandon. If not, I'll grab a guest.
I'm not sure that I'll be able to keep you two apart if Max Verstappen does win in Italy. But it'll be interesting to see that. But yeah, join us next time.
I'll just pull up the standings and that's it. Where are you?
Shut them up, yeah. All the way down in 7th or 6th it was.
It's like it didn't have Sunderland beat Newcastle, but we're like first and they're 20th. I probably might take that.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But yeah, brilliant. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for getting involved in the comments down below, and don't forget to let us know your predictions for the rest of the season and for the next race. Is Lee going to be a happy bunny in Italy? Let's hope so for Ferrari's sake. Drop a like on the video if you haven't already, and subscribe to NFTV Extra and Newcastle Fans TV. But for now, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.